Dragon SpaceX.
SpaceX Dragon on the big loop, please. SpaceX Dragon on the big loop, please. Visors down.
All right, SpaceX copies. Visors down, and I can confirm soft capture ring extension complete. We are not planning to hold at waypoint 2. We'll go through approach 2 prep.
Copies. No hold at approach 2.
Just another indication that we are getting closer and closer to docking. We did hear that call out that they can put their visors down. This fully seals their suits in preparation for the official docking to the International Space Station. Now we are at 110 meters away from the International Space Station, and waypoint 2 is up next, and that will put Dragon only 20 meters away from the space station. From here, the spacecraft will focus on aligning its docking system with the International Docking Adapter.
Dragon SpaceX on the big loop. We did copy that the visors are down, looking for confirmation that crew are ready and go for approach 2.
Crew is ready for approach 2.
And with that, we did get confirmation from NASA astronaut and the commander of Dragon Freedom that the crew's visors are down on their spacesuits and that they are go for docking now less than 100 meters away from the International Space Station. Approximate docking time today that we are tracking is 12:11 p.m. Pacific, so just minutes away from now.
They are approaching waypoint 2 now. It should only take a few minutes, 2 or 3 more minutes. You can follow along with the distance. It was moving pretty slow, but now you can see the range there in your bottom right-hand corner, almost at 80 meters away from the International Space Station.
And just prior to docking, you will hear a call out for CHOP, which stands for Crew Hands Off Point. That occurs.
Dragon SpaceX on the big loop. Ground is go for approach 2, and we'll be enabling approach 2 shortly.
Copy, so.
Again, that call out that you'll hear about 30 seconds before docking, called CHOP, is for the crew hands-off point. So any directions that would need to, any actions rather that would need to be taken would happen manually by the spacecraft autonomously versus manually by the crew. Dragon now closing in on 60 meters away from the International Space Station.
As it gets closer, we get a clearer and clearer view of the Dragon spacecraft. Again, you can still see some of those thrusters are firing with the graphic in your bottom left-hand screen.
And in addition to the nose cone being open, we can see a portion of Dragon's trunk there, and that black portion on the upper left of your screen there is actually the solar arrays on Dragon.
Yeah, we actually use that during flight to help power the vehicle. Once it's on station, though, we'll connect some umbilicals, and we will utilize the power from the space station for Dragon during its stay.
So the next milestone that we are looking ahead towards today is the arrival at waypoint 2, which is when Dragon Freedom is 20 meters away from the International Space Station. As you can see on your screen there, we're now 41 meters away. We are actually passing over the terminator line, and that is when the distinction between night and day occurs as the International Space Station orbits the Earth.
All players, this is Houston on the big loop. Dragon is on final approach and is go for docking. Please monitor per steps 5 and 6 in 1.102. Dragon approach and retreat monitoring.
Station copies, monitoring step 5 and 6.
Great news. Great news. We did get that confirmation that we are go for docking.
And that go coming from the Capcom, or going up to the crew rather, that is Capcom Jacob Lesarge. That was up to NASA astronaut Chris Williams, who is in the cupola as we speak, monitoring approach and docking, now nearing in on 16 meters away from the International Space Station. About 30 seconds prior to docking, we might hear the call out, or we will hear the call out for CHOP, which stands for Crew Hands Off Point. At this point, any aborts will have to be done automatically by Dragon. And the crew on board the space station can also send a retreat command to Dragon if needed. Dragon now 14 meters away from the International Space Station, closing in.
Again, what you can expect after Dragon makes contact with the International Space Station is that 12 hooks will be deployed, 6 at a time. Once those have hard captured, we will attach umbilicals to provide power between Dragon and power and connections between Dragon and the International Space Station.
Meters.
Copy, 10.
Just hearing some call-outs between the crew and the core of the distance between Dragon and the International Space Station, just under 10 meters.
Closing in on 8 meters, we'll stand by for the call out of CHOP. That's that crew hands off period. Freedom is approaching 5 meters away from the International Space Station.
Copy, 5.
You can now clearly see on your screen the docking adapter on Dragon as it's approaching the International Space Station. A great view from the International Space Station. You can see the short distance between Dragon, just 3 meters away.
Meters.
Copy, 2.
Continuing to close in.
1 meter.
Dragon SpaceX on the big loop. Dragon contact and soft capture complete.
Dragon copy. Soft capture complete.
And contact confirmed. Dragon made contact with the International Space Station at 12:15 p.m. Pacific time, flying 277 statute miles over South Africa.